We got a brand new Assassin's Creed Shadows trailer that for the first time showcased the fact that you can use a stalactite to distract enemies and then sneak past them. I got way more new info and footage, but first let's quickly focus on that PC trailer. So Shadows supports all the upscaling and frame generation technologies, an uncapped frame rate. There are 5 different presets and they showed an example of low, high and ultra. I don't see that much of a difference. The game has a ton of HUD customization and customizable controls that will also be in the console version of the game. And they, by the way, once again confirmed that the Series X and PS5 will have a 60 FPS performance mode with upscaling to 4K resolution. So I would imagine that the PS5 Pro is native 4K with maybe more ray tracing possibilities, but that has not been confirmed yet. We did learn that Shadows is not Steam Deck verified though, as it's below the low specs of the PC version. You see the specs, by the way, here. You can pause the video, but I mostly want to discuss some other new details that I got, because during my 10-hour play session with the game, I was surprised by the impactful perks that can really alter the way you play. As you might know, the red glowing attacks from enemies work a bit different in Shadows, as you can also parry them, but then you will still take a bit of damage and be knocked back. Well, there is a perk in the game for Yasuke that lets him parry these powerful red glowing moves from enemies just like any other attack, meaning that you can be way more aggressive and do not have to dodge out of the way. We also saw a rifle that has a 50% chance that bullets are not consumed, so you can use the gun way more often before you run out of bullets, and this might even mean that you do not have to reload, which in particular would be wild, because that creates the most downtime for the weapon. Or the rifle I got to use in the game had ricochet bullets, so I would hit multiple enemies close by while focusing on one target. For Naue, there's a chest piece that lets you instantly tag enemies while using eagle vision instead of having to manually do that. And with the Tools Master chest, you can throw a kunai at the closest enemy after an assassination, which by the way doesn't cost you a kunai. But yeah, it is basically the chain assassination skill, but we now find it as a perk on gear instead. So some really exciting stuff. I want to touch on some cool armor sets we found, how many there are in the game, how to get them, way more info. Of course, a like on the video would be awesome, and subscribe to not miss the next Assassin's Creed Shadows video. And this video is sponsored by a brand new RPG from a new indie team, Notorious Studios. If you want to support the channel, thanks for that, then totally check their debut title out via the link in the video description. In Legacy, Steel and Sorcery, you are dropped into a big open map where the goal is to upgrade your character by fighting many enemies, looting treasures and harvesting materials, but you're not alone. More on that in a moment. First, I want to go over the 4 classes. So, the Priest can hover and do powerful spells to protect herself and deal great damage. The Warrior is your typical brute with large weapons and shoulder bashes. The Hunter is fast and deals great damage from a range, while the Rogue wants to get up close and surprise players and can even steal items from them too. Because yes, next to the many challenging bosses in the world, you can also encounter other players and steal their loot and then craft better items and improve your hero even more. Although you gotta be careful because other players can steal your items as well. So totally check the early access of Legacy, Steel and Sorcery via the link in the video description. This is a great way to support the channel, and now let's get back into the video. So I learned that there are around the 9 to 10 legendary armor sets per character. For comparison, Valhalla had 10 that you could find in the game for Eivor at launch and Odyssey 12. So now we get double that, but of course divided between the 2 characters. And this does not include the Eagle Vision chest I just mentioned, because that's a free reward for completing the Battle Pass-like project in the Animus Hub, with more of these armor sets added for free over time. And this of course next to the many Helix armor sets with brand new playstyles that we can earn for free in the Animus Hub. Video about that system, by the way, if you are curious, in the video description. But how do you earn the main game gear and weapons? Well, there are multiple ways. One of them is the gear vendor. So these merchants sell different items for Naue and Yasuke, so while standing next to them you can switch to the other protagonist to see a completely different selection. And good to note is that this inventory changes and also refills every season. So after 2.5 hours of in-game time, you get a cutscene on a fast travel, or you can manually change the season in the menu, and then the vendors restock as well. This also means that they can then suddenly sell particular weapons or even trinkets that they were not selling in the previous season. And the perks on these accessories are, by the way, pretty noteworthy, even for a relatively low level, like getting 10% for all the stats stats on light armor with Naue is pretty wild, but there are even crazier perks on these trinkets and amulets. But yeah, in terms of look, they are not that impactful, but we did find some pretty cool armor. You have likely already seen the black and red Swift Shinobi set for Naue, which I really dig. But especially these Ghost Walker robes are really cool, as it has this half cloak that looks insanely awesome with the improved cape physics. Of course, a nice callback to the cloak Ezio had as well. But we also found this Onryo robe that looked like an upgraded version and with a purple cape. So again, there are 10 or so of these unique designs per character, but then also multiple color variants with slightly different patterns that you can find as well, probably before you find the legendary version, similar to what we saw in Odyssey. And the moment you find or buy these pieces of equipment, then they will also be added to your transmog system, so you can always rock them over the gear that you're currently using. Some of her headpieces are awesome too, but yeah, just like in Odyssey, headpieces are set, so you either get a hood or not. There's no way to put it up or down like in Valhalla. And also just like in Odyssey, both Naue and Yasuke remove their headgear when entering conversations and cutscenes. I at least hope that for the regular conversations they give us the option to keep the headgear on, because that was just awesome in the previous games. For Yasuke, I by the way found many helmets with built-in masks that looked really cool. He of course has this very curious Templar outfit called the Destroyer Samurai, okay. But my favorite was totally the pirate gear with the awesome samurai shoulder pads that made him more beefy and would move around as well. And I by the way asked the developers why they went with the 2 pieces of gear instead of 5. And there were 2 reasons for this. One, because it was kinda hard to mismatch different pieces in this setting in terms of armor and clothing, so they decided to combine the arms, legs, boots and gloves into a single piece. Another reason was to make the game more rewarding, because now you immediately get an impactful piece of equipment with a different look instead of just the boots. And making the game more rewarding was also the reason behind bringing the random loot system back. So there are these special military camps that by defeating all the different bosses gives you a guaranteed legendary item that you can see before entering the location. Really a ton of fun, as the bosses you encounter here can be quite challenging and are all quite different. The objective board also highlights exclusive drops, like killing the noble gives you a legendary trinket, for example. But most of the loot you get will be random, from gear chest and from taking out particular more elite style enemies. So this loot is random for everyone. They first had a system like Valhalla in place, so where every gear chest would have the same drop for every player. But we felt with the size of the world and the thing you need to find that you were just looting materials, so it's kind of boring at some point. I prefer looting a sword than a material. And I totally agree with this. In Valhalla you could easily go 5 hours without finding a new weapon or gear item, and this is also the reason why the Star Wars Outlaws open world feels way less rewarding, because most of the things you were finding were blaster upgrade parts instead of an actual cool impactful upgrade. So I'm happy they went with the Odyssey and Origins loot system in Shadows. And how it works is that while you're still low level, you will mostly find green and blue gear, but then as you increase your player level, you will get purple gear as well, and then the greens will show up less. And of course, if you don't want the gear piece anymore, you can sell it or dismantle it at the forge in your settlement. So the damage on every comparable item on the same level and with the same rarity is the same. But a green Kusarigama on level 25 will, for example, have significantly less damage compared to a blue Kusarigama. So obviously purple is even better, and legendary is even more powerful than purple. But cool in Odyssey was that purple gear had 1 extra perk slot. So most endgame builds actually used a full epic loadout instead of legendary. Something that could still be the case in Shadows as well, although I'm not convinced yet. How it works is that every gear and weapon piece, apart from the green ones, has 1 set perk and 1 perk you can engrave at the forge in your hideout. For legendary items, this set perk is always the same and basically alters your gameplay quite a bit, like the ones I mentioned before. While on epic gear, that first perk is always a stat increase. So it might actually be more useful to have 2 stat increases on items, so go for purple gear. But I have seen legendary gear that increase your damage output as well, and with better base stats. Again, we will have to wait and see, but so far, I think legendary gear will be the default choice for every build in the end game. But yeah, can't wait to figure that out, and got way more Shadows content, of course, coming your way before launch and beyond. So subscribe to not miss anything. A like on the video would really help me out, and check out our most recent video on the things that I hope will be improved before release by clicking on the screen. I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.